Slippery Daniel Andrews, the Victorian Premier who presides over the largest state debt in the nation and presides over a raft of over-budget and overtime infrastructure projects, has so busted his state of Victoria that he's been forced today to embarrassingly scrap the 2026 Commonwealth Games. Now, in typical Andrews style that reminded me of the bad old days of the COVID lockdowns, he gathered a couple of lapdog ministers, convened an early morning media conference, very rushed it was, and tried to bluster his way through a major event cancellation with a combination of fantasy and loose promises. He started by a lame reference to how Victoria stepped in to help out and save the Commonwealth Games.
Last year, when the Commonwealth Games authorities approached us and needed someone to step in to host the 2026 Commonwealth Games, as a state we were happy to help out, but of course not at any price.
Of course he was happy to help out, wasn't he? Andrews then turned to the financial reasons for walking away, and he tried to have us all believe that the original estimated cost to stage the Games of $2.6 billion has now somehow mysteriously blown out to $6 billion to $7 billion.
What's become clear is that the cost of hosting these Games in 2026 is not the $2.6 billion which was budgeted and allocated and is sitting, vast majority of which has not been spent. It's not $2.6 billion, it is in fact at least $6 billion and could be as high as $7 billion.
Seriously, it was $2.6 billion 8 weeks ago when the Victorian budget was handed down. Now, Daniel Andrews must think we are a bunch of mugs. He gave no evidence of how he arrives at that figure, and several hours later, the Commonwealth Games Association president said that was the first time he had ever heard of such figures.
They did not step in as the host at the last minute, as indicated by the Premier earlier today. The detailed budgetary implications announced today had not been cited or discussed with the CGF or CGA ahead of being notified of the government's decision earlier today. The stated cost overruns, in our opinion, are a gross exaggeration and not reflective of the operational costs presented to the Victorian 2026 Organising Committee Board as recently as June. Beyond this, the Victorian Government wilfully ignored recommendations to move events to purpose-built stadia in Melbourne and, in fact, remain wedded to proceeding with expensive temporary venues in regional Victoria.
There you go, from the horse's mouth, an exaggeration. Now, the Premier, in my view, has trashed Victoria's sporting reputation globally, and he wants to blame everyone else. But as usual with Daniel Andrews, this is all about politics. He bragged about rescuing the Games pre the state election. Why? Because he stupidly, or maybe cleverly, decided the 2026 Games would be spread around the regions in Victoria to places like Ballarat and Bendigo. Why? When Melbourne has the best established sporting facilities in Australia. Just think of the MCG, the tennis centre. I mean, we've got a roof stadium in Melbourne on the fringe of the city. Well, the simple answer there was an election coming, and Daniel Andrews wanted votes in the bush. Cynical? Maybe. Accurate? You betcha. He now portrays this reputational and financial disaster into some vague plan to build some facilities in some towns, and then went on to make another bizarre claim that he'll use the existing funds to build affordable housing. Someone predicted today each of those houses, by the way, is going to be valued at $700,000. Please, Premier, stop treating people like fools. This is the bloke who pre-election promised to re-establish the old State Electricity Commission, the SEC. That won't happen. During the campaign, he talked up an airport rail link. Hasn't happened and probably never will. Will we ever see the Commonwealth Games money used in the way Daniel Andrews promised today? I very much doubt it. And any federal money pledged won't be coming our way anytime soon. If you want evidence, have a listen to this. Daniel Andrews' great barbecuing mate, the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, he was asked a question today about the Games cancellation this morning.
Look, that's a decision made by the Victorian Government. I'll leave the Victorian Government to go through those details.
What a brush off. Victoria's in the mess all on its own, and his Premier mate, Daniel Andrews, the mate he likes to go barbecuing with, has just been thrown on the scrap heap. Now, Dan Andrews might, I think, be thinking about taking up his favourite pastime, golf, full-time.